The British Grand Prix. Yes, the 2026 edition at Silverstone. It was a sprint race weekend, so plenty of on-track action. But boy, do we have a lot of off-track discussion, plenty to break down. Charles Leclerc picking up a pressure-releasing first win of the season. It was a 250th Grand Prix win for Ferrari. It was a tale of two sides of luck in the Mercedes garage. And yes, we have a very angry Max Verstappen over at Red Bull. But the race weekend has been shaped by this safety car controversy. Let's get stuck into it. The British Grand Prix review. G'day F1 fans. So how do we feel about that one? Quite anticlimactic at the end there. Yes, we were all expecting a one-lap shootout at the end. It was not to be. And let's just clear it up straight away. The FIA has come out and they have suggested that the way the race finished was by regulation, by the rule book. The issue was a software glitch. It's always easy to blame the computers. But to sum it up, the FIA says that the race control process was correct. The mistake was the system accidentally displaying the wrong safety car message, creating the expectation of a final lap restart that was actually never allowed under the regulations. So there you have it. That's the explanation from the FIA. Now, it is what it is. We can discuss this or debate this over the next couple of days, no doubt. It'll probably bring up some old memories of Abu Dhabi 2021. But the result stands. And if we're looking at the Drivers' Championship, well, that big lead that Kimi Antonelli had in the championship has been cut down to 25 points. So he's leading on 179. George Russell sitting back in second on 154, and Lewis within strike distance on 147. Let's quickly go over the sprint race results, and it was a great pole position for Lewis Hamilton, but unfortunately for him, he was unable to convert the sprint race. It was won by a patient Kimi Antonelli, Lewis Hamilton in P2, and rounding out the podium was a good result for Lando Norris coming home in P3 from a P6 start. But I think the early expectations was perhaps Lewis Hamilton could be on track for a 10th Grand Prix win at the British Grand Prix. It was not to be. As I mentioned, his teammate Charles Leclerc getting the race win. But the race itself, it was set up, well, everybody started on the medium tyre and clearly it was looking to be a one-stop race. We had a few neutralizations of the race. We even got neutralized by an umbrella. Yes, an umbrella on the track on lap 22 that brought out the virtual safety car. Lap 39, Hulkenberg stopped on the track that brought out a VSC. And of course, the lap 48 incident where Max Verstappen went off at Stowe. And that caused, of course, the safety car, which we've been talking about. And we can't go without talking about the LEGO Drivers Parade. Now, we saw a few instances of LEGO last year on the grid, most notably Miami 2025. And yes, it gave us another round of plenty of memorable moments. A little bit different this year. Each driver had their own individual car. I think they were basically go-karts with a buttload of LEGO built all on top of them. And of course, yes, plenty of shenanigans and some real crazy footage. So highly entertaining stuff. Feels like they should just make LEGO the official way of doing a driver's parade. And let us know in the comments, what were your favorite LEGO Drivers Parade moments? All right, has to be Ferrari on the back of Charles Leclerc's first win in, I think his first win in over 2 years. What a pressure-releasing win it was for Charles. And boy, you could sense it in his radio message after he crossed the line to his team. A lot of emotion and quite the statement win too in front of his teammates' home crowd. Qualified ahead of his teammate in P2, Hamilton back in P3. You could argue that if Kimi Antonelli didn't fall into reliability issues, the win for Charles perhaps may not have occurred. It was a good win for Charles. He did control the pace. The first stint went really well. He lost the lead briefly when Antonelli did stay out longer. So Antonelli went for a massive tyre offset, but he re-inherited that lead once Antonelli pitted. And then it was a matter of just trying to protect the lead. And I think at that point, Antonelli was able to get the lead down to around 5 seconds, maybe a little bit lower. And he was closing in on Charles. But unfortunately, then came Antonelli's issues. Charles did do, obviously, that pit stop right at the end under the safety car, which made no difference in the end because we didn't get that one lap shootout. And because he had such a gap, he was able to essentially take a free pit stop. That's, you could say he was quite dominant in his race pace over everybody else. This is one that Charles needed to get his season back on track. Can he bounce back from here and continue his vein of form? Lewis Hamilton, I think he'll be pretty disappointed with P3 in the end. He's riding quite the momentum at the moment, and I think he probably does sense that he had the foot on Charles Leclerc's throat over the last few weekends, and he probably wanted to continue that. Dominant start to the weekend, FP1 quickest, taking the pole, unfortunately not having the race pace in the sprint to take the win. Now, the issue for Lewis from the start was that he did cop a 5-second penalty that he needed to serve in his pit stop due to a false start. Now, if you look at the replay, you could argue that he gained nothing from it, but it's just as far as the rules now with the way that the light sequence is, it looked like he'd selected gear, the car kind of lurched forward a bit and then stopped, and then he went. So, but they are the rules. So by the book, it was the right call. Yeah, put him under pressure, losing that 5 seconds. We know how close these cars are. A hindsight call under the safety car near the end. They pitted him to put the softer boots on, the freshies, and that's where George Russell was able to take the P2 position back from him. Should have stayed out, but again, these are one of those like iffy calls where, you're playing a risk and reward game as a strategist, right? And you could see that the majority of the cars went for the fresh boots. It was only George Russell that did, and then George Russell, narratively, he profited from that call. So that's just sometimes the way it goes. Hamilton was complaining quite a bit about understeer in the car, so he wasn't quite happy throughout most of the race. He was investigated after the race for a yellow flag infringement, but he was cleared. So good points on the board for Lewis overall anyway. The P2 in the sprint race, the P3 in the feature race. It keeps him in touch. Look, he is in touch for the World Championship. You could still argue that Charles is too. Plenty of races left. I mean, what have we got? We've just had 9 rounds of Formula One action, not even halfway through the season yet. Mercedes, well, that was a proper tale of good and bad luck. Reliability issues are still plaguing this team. You've got to say that they have left the most points on the table this season just due to reliability problems. But let's start off with George. He did finish P2 in the race from a grid position of P4. Pretty disappointing sprint race as well, finishing P4 in the sprint race. Let's not forget, George Russell had to make an unscheduled pit stop due to a issue with pressure in, I think it was a rear right. He was having a slow air leak. And at that point of time, he was sort of in a gaggle fighting for, I think it was around P3 at that time. But he had to come in and box on lap 34. But then, as fate has it, Verstappen then goes off around lap 48, and he is able to stay out there. But he is the only one that gambles pretty much in the top 10, stays out on the old mediums. I think they were around 22 lap old mediums. And he was able to hold the position because we didn't get that famed 1 lap shootout, unfortunately. But I think if we did get that 1 lap shootout, he would have definitely struggled to hold on to P2. In fact, I think he would have probably finished more, maybe P4, P5. If that was the case, we had, Hamilton on fresh set of boots, softs, Lando back in P4 as well. So it would have been a pretty tough gig to hold on to that podium. But look, as fate has it, he has actually broken his curse. I don't think he's ever had a podium at the British Grand Prix. So bit of luck on his side, and he has now got that lead down, or the deficit down, to just 25 points. Yep, George riding a bit of luck on this one, but, this is how the season ebbs and flows, right, with luck. But Mercedes itself, they need to get on some of these reliability problems because it has been a bit of a feature for them so far after 9 rounds of the season. Well, you could argue the most unluckiest guy on the grid yesterday. This is championship leader Kimi Antonelli. It was a good start to the weekend. He got the sprint race win. Then he picks up pole position for the feature race. And, well, it was a bit of a tough start. He lost his first place to Charles Leclerc, and Hamilton got past him. So both Ferraris getting out front early. But he was able to repass Hamilton around lap 11 and resume normal business. And he looked pretty handy out there as well. Good race pace. They ran him along on the medium up until I think around lap 35. Gave him a big tyre offset over Charles and basically gave him the job to hunt down Charles at the end, which I think most of us would agree that he would have been able to do. So potentially a race win gone begging due to an issue with the car. And I believe it was a front left, was it a windshield on the wheel? Something along those lines. So poor Kimi, it was actually quite a tough watch. And just listening to him on the radio, because at the time, like when he first had the issue, Bono didn't really know what was going on. No one really knew exactly what was going on. It was just Kimi reporting that I can't turn the car, like it's just not turning. So clearly they didn't know exactly what was going on. He came in, I think it was around lap 41, pitted. I think they did change the front wing, put on a new set of boots on. I guess they were hoping that was the issue. He's gone back out, reported that the issue still remains. They had to come back in again, I think lap 43. And then they had realized that, it was the left windshield, whatever you want to call it. They've ripped it off. And then at that point in time, you're sort of hoping that's the problem. Surely they're good to go. He gets back out. He's basically trundling around in P10. I think Colapinto was behind him, chasing him down. And, the issue remained. Unfortunately for Kimi, he also got hit with a 5-second, was it a 5-second or 10-second penalty? I can't remember, but it was a penalty due to track limits. I think it was a 5-second penalty in the end. And I think he did cross the line in P10, but that pushed him down to a P15 finish. I thought Mercedes may have tried to argue the point of the reason for the track incursions due to the mechanical issue, but I don't think they went ahead with it. So a lot of points missed out for Kimi Antonelli then. He can walk away from the weekend. It's a double sword, right? Absolute disappointment from the mechanical failure. But again, he was dominant over George Russell. So he needs to take that confidence with him that, when he's on track, the car's good, he gets it done. And he's been basically doing that for quite some time now. So, 25-point lead in the championship. It's come down quite a lot, and there's still a lot of races to go. But reliability, still an issue over at Mercedes. On to McLaren. Now, they were sporting quite a nice-looking livery, I must add. A special livery for the British Grand Prix, predominantly white car. Lando Norris, well, he had a pretty decent weekend if you sort of, just go by the points perspective. It was a good P3 finish in the sprint race. But as far as the feature race, the McLaren's just lacking a bit of pace, really, especially the one-off pace. Qualified P6, finishing P4. He spent the early phase stuck behind Hadjar in the Red Bull traffic. But he was, stayed in the podium fight from the outside, but never quite got track position. He pitted late under the safety car, like pretty much everyone in the top 10 bar George, put on the fresh softs. But unfortunately for him, no chance to attack on that potential one-lap shootout. Look, it was solid. I would say maximal extraction of the car for Lando Norris for the weekend. Don't think there was much more that he could have done. Pretty cool to see also with the home crowd, the Lando Norris stand with all the bright yellow bucket hats. Oscar Piastri on the other side, did a bit of a disappointing weekend, really. You could argue maybe through no fault of his own in the feature race. He did qualify P8 for it. And I haven't actually seen the footage of exactly what happened, but my understanding is he made contact with Liam Lawson and did cause some front wing damage, which meant he had to come to the pits early, unscheduled pit stop. got rid of the medium tyre. They put him onto the hard, and then the early talk around Oscar Piastri was, could he go to the end of the race on that hard tyre? It was always going to be quite an effort. Yeah, I mean, it was a good recovery drive in the end, just finishing outside the points in P11. Not going too well this weekend, because even when you take into the sprint race results, it was a P7 finish as well. So one for Oscar Piastri to move on from. Lando Norris definitely had the wood on Oscar Piastri this weekend at the British Grand Prix. Red Bull Racing, on the back of Isaac Hadjar this week, qualified 5th, finished P5. If we go to a sprint race results, it was pretty disappointing, really, just outside the points in P9 in the sprint race. But it was a pretty strong qualifying from Isaac Hadjar. He managed to out-qualify Max Verstappen, I think, for the 3rd time this season. Now, there was an interesting statistic that I did see. I think in the previous 70 Grand Prix before Hadjar came into Red Bull, Max Verstappen had only been out-qualified by his teammate 3 times in 70 Grand Prix. So Isaac, bit of a confidence boost. He's been able to do that already 3 times over the course of a season. Now, yes, Max Verstappen did have some issues with his car. The Red Bull car still has issues with getting off the line at the race starts. We definitely saw that in the sprint race. They got gobbled up. Now, Max, he qualified in Q7. He finished the race. I think he was classified P20 in the end, but essentially it was a DNF going off there at the end. P6 in the sprint race. It was a very disappointing weekend for Max. Now, I think there was a lot of disappointment on Max's side regarding not taking a fresh engine. I think the idea was to take a freshie for the feature race, which I think would have meant he would have had to start in pit lane, but I think he was pretty keen on that. Look, we saw some pretty good hard battles with George Russell, some wheel-to-wheel action, which was always good, always feisty to see him battling his old mate George Russell. And, well, the big thing was he was the cause of the safety car. Now, he crashed at quite a high speed at Stowe. We know how fast it is going through there. And at first, it was like, was this driver error or was this like a mechanical failure of the car? It seems to be that it was due to the rear wing. So closing up, but not fully closing, and obviously causing a disturbance with the airflow over the rear wing. And boy, do you need some downforce going around a corner like Stowe at such a speed. So yeah, quite dangerous, really. Max Verstappen, in the post-race interview, he said this is essentially the 2nd time it's happened, but it seems to be that this was a different fault. So I don't know if that really instills a lot of confidence in the car. To be fair, there's a lot of footage going around where, Max, he just did not look pretty happy all weekend. So again, does this play into the rumors that will start circulating regarding his future at Red Bull? I don't know. You tell me in the comments if you think this was the final straw for Max. Disappointing weekend after quite a promising one out at Austria. Racing Bulls. So here we go. P5 and the Constructors is proper heating up. There's 1 point between the two now. And, well, Liam Lawson, you've done it again, mate. You've done it again. Good points again. He's just so super consistent at the moment. Now, even, going back to the sprint race, he managed to pick up the final point with a P8. And let's not forget, Arvid Lindblad was sniffing around a lot. He wasn't far off the pace either. And coming into the actual qualifying for the feature race, well, both appearances, both Red Racing Bulls in Q3 yet again, but Lindblad was able to get the better of him qualifying in P9. So Liam Lawson taking out P10 in qualifying. But it was a P6 result for Liam Lawson. Yes, a little bit fortuitous, being able to take advantage of a couple of cars in front, notably Antonelli and Max Verstappen, unable to, hold on to their positions. But good points. He'll be very happy with that. And also, there were moments there where Lindblad was on the radio, sort of as he was following close to Liam, just sort of edging on the team to maybe swap the positions. He got on the radio saying something along the lines of like Liam needs to speed up. And as I saw that and I was watching the telemetry data, Liam did do that and then sort of pulled a little bit of a gap on Lindblad. So he did what he needed to do. So, yeah, it just continues, right? Good points. And when you're looking at the Drivers' Championship, he's consolidating P10 with 39 points, and he's not too far off Pierre Gasly, only 3 points in it. So, again, still early days in the championship, 9 races of a 22-race season, plenty to go on. But, mate, it's got to be just the confidence in Liam right now must be on next level. It just looks like he's driving like he belongs, no pressure on him, and he's just doing a fantastic job. Because you got to remember, there's still Solov waiting in the wings, and again, Solov, you got to give him credit, man. In F2, I think he took out the sprint and the feature race as well. So there is external pressure with another young Red Bull driver coming through the ranks. Now, Arvid Lindblad, look, he'll be happy with that. P7, good points again. He's doing a fantastic job as a rookie. He sort of did hang with Liam for most of the weekend. Like, Liam did look like the quicker driver overall, but Arvid was not far off. And like I mentioned, he did get one up over Liam in the feature race qualifying. He ran clean. He got what he needed to do, finished right behind Lawson. That's what you got to do as a rookie, right? Stick with your teammate. And he's done that. So, yeah, good points for Racing Bulls as well. Now, Audi, they were a bit of a smoky for me, to be honest. The pace did look good. And on the back of Gabby Bortoletto, he's finally picked up another point-scoring finish, going from P11 on the grid to P8. Pace was pretty good. He's converted, the points. And we've mentioned that plenty of times. Like, you got to put yourself in the mix to pick up scraps if some of these top teams have reliability issues. And that's what he did. Great P8, some good points for him. Nico Hulkenberg, unfortunately for him, it wasn't a repeat of the euphoria of the 2025 edition where he finished on the podium. Unfortunately for him, it was another DNF. So Audi, again, they're still fighting with reliability issues over there. And, that's something they need to get on top of. It was actually the issue for the virtual safety car on lap 39. Unfortunately for Nico Hulkenberg, he is still one of, I think, 4 drivers left on 0 points. So he's still on the donut, but going by that, he has not been that bad. There's been plenty of times where he's been on the cusp of picking up points. Alpine. Well, this week, you could say that the racing pace sort of came back to them, although fortuitously picking up some points on the cusp, well, picking up the scraps, so to speak. Colapinto, pretty disappointing. It was a Q1 elimination, so starting from P19 on the grid, but a fantastic race, picking up P9. Pierre Gasly started in 12th position, so pretty decent qualified position from him, picking up the final point in P10. Gasly, he had the grid penalty as well, so even though he qualified Q12, he actually started P15, so that definitely did hurt his chances. Double points finish, exactly what they needed. Racing Bulls, they've been getting it done consistently over the last 3 or so race weekends. And Alpine, if they want to hold P5 in that Constructors' Championship where there's just 1 point in it, they need Gasly and Colapinto basically matching what those Racing Bulls can do. Now, on to Haas. It was really another disappointing weekend for the American outfit. Ollie Behrman, hometown hero, of course, qualifying P14, finishing the race in P12. Esteban Ocon being out-qualified yet again in P17 and finishing behind Behrman in P13. Now, you could argue Behrman, it was quite a decent recovery drive, all things considered. He had a lap 1 incident with Alex Albon and spun, so basically he lost momentum in the race early. But yeah, like I said, you could argue not a bad finish for Ollie Behrman. Esteban, on the other hand, look, we still think he's fighting for his career over at Haas, and he didn't do his career prospects any favours, really, getting out-qualified yet again by Behrman and outperformed. Stayed out of trouble early. I think he did time one of his stops around one of the VSC periods. Not sure he was able to really profit off that, though, because I think it was was it Hulkenberg's one? It was no, it might have been the umbrella. It may have been the umbrella incident, and it was a very quick VSC. Shout out to the marshal clearing the umbrella super quickly. But again, Haas, where has their form gone? They need to turn it around pretty quickly. Now on to Cadillac. You'd have to say this was a pretty positive weekend. Maybe they got to keep that livery. That was quite an epic. I think it was a livery special edition because of July the 4th. Very American, very freedom. I can hear a bald eagle screaming in the back of my head every time I see it. They bought big upgrades in Austria and they weren't able to get a lot of running because of the double DNF. Well, Silverstone, they able to get the car on track, get the laps in, get the data. Sergio Perez, he qualified in P20, finished the race in P14, and Valtteri P18 on the grid and a P16 finish. So good data gathering for Cadillac. Onwards and upwards, boys and girls. Maybe keep the livery for the rest of the season. It was a cracker, and perhaps may the force be with you with that July 4th special edition. Now on to Williams. Williams, home race. They bought a special livery as well. Can you spot the difference? No, not really. So it was a big announcement regarding the livery, but pretty underwhelming, I would say. Now, Carlos, again, he got the job done. He out-qualifies Alex Albon, although it was, I think it was about 2 or 3 tenths in it as well. So it was a Q15 start, but he was able to start P14 because of Gasly being demoted. It was a P17 finish for Carlos. Alex Albon, Q16. He was on the grid, 16th. And unfortunately, lap 1 incident, and really he just went into one of those races we have seen quite frequently with Alex, where he does about 5 or 6 pit stops and they just sort of trundle around, gathering data, ends up being a test session. So not a lot of fun. Back to Carlos, though, he was running as high as P10 early in the race. He got off to a pretty good start. It was a really decent start, actually, but clearly the pace was not in that car to hold that, and dropped back pretty quickly. He actually set the fastest lap late on the softs, I've got here on the notes. So kudos to you, Carlos. Fastest out in that Williams. Good job. He was actually penalised for overtaking the safety car. So he's penalised 1 lap. So that's why he dropped to P17 officially. So actually didn't see that. Didn't see that happen during the race. Alex, mate, when is a bit of luck going to turn around for Alex, because he sure needs it? It's been a season to forget. But Williams, when are they bringing their upgrades? They got to be bringing them soon. They got to get that weight off the car, and I've said it plenty of times. Carlos Sainz, there's a bit of market value on that lad. I think the few teams would like him. His name is going to be mentioned quite frequently as we get into the summer break of where he's going to go. So they need to convince him with a big upgrade that they can get the car back on the right track. And, of course, Aston Martin. Well, I think the biggest cheer for them was the Lego race. I think, did Fernando Alonso win the Drivers' Parade Lego race? I think he may have. So that was really the biggest storyline for Aston Martin. Q22 start for Fernando. Lance Stroll, I guess, if you take anything out of it, he has outqualified Fernando Alonso again with a Q21 start. In fact, Fernando had to start from pit lane in the end. He did have a little problem. That's right. In the formation lap, he was stationary on the track for a little bit, and then he had to boot it up and get around, and ended up having to start through the pit lane. P18 finish in the end. Lance Stroll finishing P19. Keep in mind that Lance had a 10-place PU grid penalty, so he actually started in P22 even though he qualified P21. So really not much of an issue there. He had plenty of track limits too, Lance Stroll. So he's been quite consistent with track limit issues. All eyes on the Hungarian GP for when we expect a massive upgrade package. Well, there we have it. All teams reviewed, done and done for the 2026 edition of the British Grand Prix. Let's move into the predictions. Now, I did enter this weekend with a 7-4 lead over Mick, and I'm happy to report that I still maintain that 3-point lead. It is now 8-5. I was able to get Hamilton's P3 feature race prediction right, and Mick had Kimi Antonelli for pole in the feature race. Now, Mick, he should be back on the next one. He ends his European summer adventure, I believe, today. So he'll be back, ready to get stuck back in. And of course, if you made it this far, yes, it's that time to shield the channel. We are still trying to push for 1,000 subscribers by season's end. So if you do like the content, give us a big thumbs up as well. That is greatly appreciated. And I think we can just move on to the final thought. Well, the weekend itself, there was plenty of on-track action. Now, were you happy with that on-track action? It did feel like we sort of reverted back to the typical sort of energy deployment passes that we saw earlier in the season. The track definitely didn't have enough zones for proper recharge and that type of thing. So we could argue that some of the racing, again, was sort of on the artificial side. We did see some good wheel-to-wheel action, though. Must admit, there was some really good action. But the safety car, what do you think? Was it the right call in the end? Did it ruin the race? Did it make it too anticlimactic? Would you have rather seen a one-lap shootout? Should maybe the regulations change where we always have to end on a green flag? So a few other racing series do something similar. I think NASCAR goes down that route where a race can't end under a yellow. So let me know in the comments if you think this is something that the FIA need to address. The battle at Ferrari does take a bit of a turn. That was a proper pressure release win for Charles Leclerc. He definitely needed that. And it was a statement drive out in front of Lewis Hamilton's home crowd. And what about Kimi Antonelli? Does he walk away losing confidence, or is he look back at the weekend and go, well, okay, I didn't get the points, didn't get a potential race win, and my lead is maybe cut down now to 25 points, but he still dominated George. Let's be honest. He still dominated. But the way of the ebb and flow of the season with regarding reliability and luck, and we have to talk about Max Verstappen. Is this the turning point? He didn't look happy at all over the weekend. There were some moments where, you look at his body language. Yeah, he's not a happy camper. So again, the conjecture surrounding where Max goes for 2027 or beyond will heat up. We've got 2 more races until we get into that funny season, that summer break, where the rumours will definitely amp up. Got a little bit of time off before we head out to the next one, the Belgian Grand Prix. Of course, that is one we all look forward to. So until then, stay sane, go and touch some grass, and enjoy a bit of time off. And we'll see you for the Belgian Grand Prix. Catch up.